The last thing we need to evaluate on the right-hand side of our card is pretty much a check-off type of item. Do we need to do a lime requirement test? Phosphate, potash, or nitrogen are needed. And if none of those are needed, it's no fertilizer or soil amendments are needed on that site. Now, if we turn over on pages 24 and 25 of our manual again, we look at this information. It tells us is going to be provided on the site card based upon a soil test that has been performed. On pH, if we're between 4 and 6, that would be when we'd want to check lime requirement test. So basically below a pH of 6, we would check lime requirement test. If we were above a pH of 6, we don't have to worry about that. And phosphorus, it tells us, is variable for crops, but if we're above 10 parts per million, we would not check phosphorus. It would be considered adequate. On potassium, potassium is highly variable depending upon the crop that we're growing, but for the purpose of this exercise, if we're above 150 parts per million, we consider we consider potassium to be adequate. So we look at the site card, and let's say the site card said that the potassium was 80 parts per million, then we'd have to check potassium or potash over here on this site card because that would fall below our parameter of 150 parts per million. Nitrogen is also extremely variable. Probably the requirement for nitrogen is one of the most variable fertilizer requirements we have, and because of that, we don't actually get a soil test report for nitrogen in parts per million. Our site card will simply tell us that nitrogen is adequate or deficient. Obviously, if the site card says nitrogen is deficient, then we come over here under fertilizer and soil amendments. We darken the circle beside number 24, nitrogen, indicating that we would need to apply it. So the N, P, and K levels in the lime requirement test are simple checkoffs based on the information that's given to us on the site card. We've now gone through the parameters that are being evaluated in the soil evaluation contest on the left-hand side of the scorecard. We've also gone through and briefly discussed the vegetative, mechanical practices, and fertilizer or soil amendments that are on the right-hand side of the card. At this point in time, I think we're ready for a practice exercise. And what I mean by this is we're going to go in to an example that I will give you. In your packet of materials, you'll have an example that is entitled Land Evaluation Example Exercise Number 1. On there, we'll have information for you that would be found on the site card, and there will also be information that you would have had to evaluate at the site. So on the basis of this information, site card information plus characteristics that you evaluated at the site, I'll be asking you to go through and complete one of these land evaluation cards. There'll actually be 2 exercises. What I'd like you to do is to complete the card first and then view the rest of the tape, the portion of the tape after this, where we go through and discuss what your evaluations should have been on those 2 practice exercises. Thank you.